CCP's Deception of the World. Hello everyone, it's Michael here. Our program Deception of the World systematically exposes the CCP's history of deception and murder through presenting historical events and influential people. Today's story is about Mr. Chiang Kai-shek, a great man in modern Chinese history. Chinese people are familiar with the name, however, most mainlanders do not know the truth about Mr. Chiang Kai-shek, who was discredited by the CCP for many years, received harsh criticism, so that people would mistakenly believe that he was an enemy of the Chinese people. Not even one word of the CCP's propaganda can be trusted. Mr. Chiang Kai-shek was the pioneer of the Xinhai Revolution and father of the nation, Sun Yat-sen's arm, also the former president of the Republic of China. Let's begin our story. Tiananmen Square, an ancient building that has been in existence for more than 700 years, is the main gate of the Imperial City of the Forbidden City, the symbol of the imperial capital. It was built in the 15th year of Yongle, 1417, during the reign of Ming Emperor Cheng Zhuzi, and was originally called Cheng Tianmen, then renamed Tiananmen in the 8th year of Shunzhi, 1651, in the Qing dynasty. At the time, the Ming Yongle Emperor decided to assign the Son of God to guard the state gate, make Beijing the imperial capital, and establish the palace, Tiananmen, as the main gate. After the Qing dynasty entered the country and Huang Taiji came to power, Tiananmen was still used as the main gate of the palace. Because of the special meaning of Tiananmen, the portraits of 13 great figures have been hung here. Today, most Chinese people after the 1950s do not know that the first portrait hanging on the Tiananmen Tower was not of Mao Zedong, the Communist Party leader printed in textbooks, but of Yuan Shikai. In China's early years, there was no tradition of hanging pictures of leaders on buildings. With the spread of Western learning in modern Chinese society, the practice of hanging portraits of Western political leaders on public occasions and important ceremonies was accepted by the last emperor of the Qing dynasty and the people of the Qing dynasty. After Yuan Shikai restored the empire at the beginning of the Republic, it is said that the first thing he did was to hang a standard portrait of himself on the Tiananmen Tower, but his reign came to an end in 1916, after which the portrait was naturally taken down. Unfortunately, the old Yuan Tiananmen photo actually left no historical record, but at the time, Yuan Shikai's head was minted on the national circulation of silver coins, so Yuan Datao arrived in thousands of households. An interesting document was discovered from the North Pacific Government Brief History. It states that the old Yuan wanted to rule by constitutional monarchy, and his foreign advisory group developed new royal norms. They extracted a few sentences for us to compare how the CCP's highest leaders treated themselves in ruling Chinese people. Provisions of 3. The Chinese Empire, the Great Emperor, for the Han, Manchu, Mongolian, Hui, and Tibetan 5 great emperors, princesses, county princesses can be married off to the 5 subjects. 4th provision, the imperial family from the prince down to the clan. Offences and punishments are the same as the law of the common people. 5th provision, princes and kings may be naval and military officials, but may not organize political parties or be important political officials. 6th, the eunuch system was abolished forever. 7th, the establishment of female officials in the palace forever abolished the system of picking court ladies. And 10th, all relatives of the emperor shall not operate business and compete with the common people for profits. Yuan's constitutional monarchy is much more politically correct than the communist bandit totalitarianism. The second person to climb the Tiananmen Gate was Sun Yat-sen, who founded the Kuomintang and is revered by the Chinese as the father of the nation in 1928. At that time, Mr. Chiang adhered to Mr. Sun's legacy of the successful northern expedition and unification of China, and immediately hung a standard statue of Sun Yat-sen on the Tiananmen Tower as a tribute to the father of the nation, who died in Beijing in 1925, so that his spirit in heaven could see the flag of the Republic of China under the national government, finally flying over the ancient capital. Of course, the flag was lowered to half-mourning. On August 24, 1928, the Republican newspaper, The Times, published a photo showing workers hanging Sun Yat-sen's portrait in the middle of the Tiananmen Gate, with the father's will on both sides. The revolution has not yet succeeded. Comrades still need to work hard. According to the central government's original documents, Mr. Sun left the original words of the State Affairs Will, but the last 6 words were a little different. Later, a giant portrait of Jiang Gong, who led the Chinese military and people to win the war, was mounted on the Tiananmen Tower. In fact, so far as many as 11 to 13 portraits of people have been hung on the Tiananmen building, in addition to the 3 mentioned earlier. The rest are of old Mao and the head of the Communist Party's Red Generation, and even a Westerner, which we will talk about later. It is interesting to note that from 1930 onwards, Chiang began a massive campaign against bandits, even painting the slogan, "Fight against the Communists," on Tiananmen Square. On the other hand, after the success of the Northern Expedition in 1927, Generalissimo Chiang formed the national government in Nanking and took entirely new measures to govern the country politically, economically, militarily, and educationally. The short-lived prosperity that emerged in the country under the national government in the decade that followed would have revealed the first signs of a golden period of development, especially in Shanghai, whose prosperity is astonishing to today's future generations. But in 1931, the Japanese army captured the northeast, and the national tragedy began. Realizing Japan's ambition to invade China, Generalissimo Chiang believed at that time that the Second World War had begun, and that war between China and Japan was inevitable. However, Chiang also realized that there was a big gap between the strength of China and Japan, so he put forward the idea of protracted resistance war and began to develop armaments vigorously, training troops and purchasing weapons. Information shows that before the outbreak of the all-out war, the national government had already purchased 10,000 gold marks of weaponry and military equipment, and equipped 40 divisions with the help of German military advisors. In addition, Generalissimo Chiang divided the national battlefield into 5 regions and intensified the construction of fortifications and positions in each. He also established relationships with local warlords in the southwest, preparing to continue the resistance even if he was forced to retreat in the future, depending on favorable geography. Not surprisingly, when the Japanese launched a full-scale invasion of China in 1937, Generalissimo Chiang led millions of national troops in an arduous and heroic resistance. At that time, Generalissimo Chiang's view of the Japanese invasion and the world's current situation was, Japan has no strategic resources for sustained warfare. As long as it could maneuver with the Japanese to a certain extent, it would either invade Siberia in the north or go south to the South Pacific Islands, Indonesia, causing confrontation with the Soviet Union or Europe and the United States. Siberia only has coal and iron. Only the South Ocean has rubber. Because a large amount of rubber is needed for the military, the Japanese army must be in conflict with the United States and Europe. In this way, the Sino-Japanese War would become part of the World War and would end at the same time as the World War. Everything went as Chiang's analysis predicted, and later the Japanese army moved south in force, really clashing with the American and European garrisons to start a war, forcing the Allies to declare war on Japan. The Chinese anti-Japanese battlefield immediately became an important part of the world's anti-fascist battlefield. In August 1945, China's war against Japan was finally won. No one can deny that without Generalissimo Chiang leading the national army for 8 years of protracted resistance and dragging a large number of Japanese troops to death on the Chinese battlefield, the progress of victory in World War II would have been delayed. On the other hand, the National Army paid a heavy price for this. From July 1937 to August 1945, 22 battles between the National Army and the Japanese, with more than 1 million soldiers on both sides, took place. 1,117 important battles and 28,931 battles of small and medium scale, with more than 3.25 million National Army soldiers killed and more than 200 generals killed. The nationalist heroic sacrifices also resulted in significant battle achievements. Nearly 1 million Japanese troops were killed or wounded, and of the 129 Japanese generals killed in China, 126 were taken out by the nationalists. Chiang's leadership of the National Army's enduring and tenacious resistance had impressed the United States and Europe, which is why the United States and Britain declared Chiang Kai-shek as one of the four strongest heads in the late war and invited him to represent China at the Cairo Conference in 1943 to discuss the development of a joint war plan against Japan and to solve the Far East problem. At the Cairo Conference, a large portrait of Chiang Kai-shek appeared on the international stage for the first time, alongside those of Roosevelt and Churchill. It is said that the Northwest tour of Chinese and foreign journalists who visited Yan'an that year also saw the portraits of the three hanging in Yan'an. That's all for this episode. Please like and subscribe to our channel and share with your friends. See you next time.